young math Padawans, it's Mrs. Angel with your lesson for today on solving equations with the distributive property. This time, what to do when you have to distribute a negative. When distributing with a negative number, the important thing to remember is that everything is going to change, meaning that positives are going to become negative, negatives become positives, addition and subtraction, it's all going to change. Let's look at example 1. This negative 4 times a positive x is going to cause that to become a negative 4x. X went from being positive to now being negative. And this negative 4 times a minus 5, well, if I multiply a negative and a minus, then that operation is equivalent to adding. So it's actually going to change this operation into a positive or a plus 20. So multiplying by a negative is going to change everything inside of the parentheses. And our simplified value here is negative 4x plus 20. Looking at the middle one here, if I multiply negative 5 by a positive 2x, a negative times a positive is a negative, this would become negative 10x. So again, I went from positive to negative. And multiplying negative 5 by a plus 1, well, that's going to change because adding a negative becomes subtraction. So this changes into subtraction, and 5 times 1 is 5. Negative 10x minus 5. Everything that was originally in the parentheses had to change. Last example here, negative 3 times a positive 6, that's a negative 18. I'm going from positive to negative. And a negative 3 times a minus 5x, well, that's going to change to addition, and 15x comes from 5 and 3, so negative 18 plus 15x. Our first equation that we're going to deal with is negative 4 times the group of x minus 5 equals 12. I'm going to start by putting a line down the middle of my equal sign. In method 1 here, we're actually going to use the distributive property first, then follow it up with our properties of equality. So I do see that, again, my variable's on the left side, that's where I'm looking, and I'm distributing a negative 4 on that side. So again, I'm thinking everything is going to change. So negative 4 times a positive x becomes a negative 4x. And negative 4 times a minus 5, that changes to plus, and 4 times 5 is 20. So the first step we used, the first tool we used was our distributive property. But since we distributed a negative, everything had to change. From here, it's a pretty simple two-step. My constant is 20, so I'm going to go in and apply ESPO. And my new equation is negative 4x equals negative 8. Now that I'm down to just a one-step equation, I can apply depot and divide. And I'm left with x equals positive 2 because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Now instead of checking, which is what we would normally do, we're going to solve this same equation again, this time only using our properties of equality. As always, I start by putting a line down the middle of the equal sign. Now to avoid having to deal with the changes that come from distributing a negative, you can always use division property instead. I can start off my equation with depot and divide both sides by negative 4. Whatever is being multiplied must also be divided. Now that creates a big 1 here and leaves us with x minus 5. And on the other side, positive 12 divided by negative 4 becomes negative 3. And now I can just apply APO and add 5 to both sides. And I still end up with x equals 2. Since you end up with x equals 2 in both methods, it really doesn't matter which one you choose. So did you prefer distributing first or depot first? Looking at equation 2, we're going to start the same way, line down the middle of the equal sign, and starting off with our distributive property. But be careful, we are distributing a negative here, negative 5. So everything is going to change. Negative 5 times positive 2 becomes negative 10. That positive became a negative. And negative 5 times a plus 1, that's going to change into a minus, and 5 times 1 is 5. So again, everything inside of the parentheses had to change. Now we can just go in and use our properties of equality. Since the constant here is minus 5, I'm going to start with APO and add 5 to both sides. That leaves me with negative 20 equals negative 10x, and now I can use depot and divide by negative 10. And that leaves me with positive 2 equals x. So again, instead of checking, let's just solve it using a different series of steps and see if we end up with the same thing. After I put down the line in the middle of my equal sign, I'm going to start off this equation with division, DPOE. And divide both sides by negative 5, since that's what's being multiplied. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. And I'm left with 2x plus 1 on the right. Negative 25 divided by negative 5 is positive 5. From here, it's a two-step equation. My constant is plus 1. I'm going to come in and apply SPO and subtract 1 from both sides. That leaves me with 4 equals 2x. I can now apply depot and divide by 2. And once again, I'm left with positive 2 equals x. Again, since we ended up with the same solution, it doesn't matter which method you use. So did you prefer method 1, distributing first, or method 2, just using properties of equality? And now it's your turn. On this last page, you're going to solve the equation below and check your solution. You can either use distributive property first, or you can start off with depot. Whatever you choose to use, you're going to solve it again using the other method. So if you use depot first, next time around you're going to try solving it using distribute. Or if you use distribute first, next time around you're going to solve using depot. Now, I'm not going to help you through this one, but I will tell you that you should end up with a solution of x equals 1. If you end up with x equals 1, then chances are you did your steps correctly. That's it for today's lesson on solving with the distributive property and negatives. I will see you next time.